Hello everybody, my name is Chun Xiao. Today I'm going to walk you through how can we use Meeting SDK to do local recording in a containerized environment. So some of the things you will definitely need is that you will need this code sample which can be found at our GitHub/Zoom. Search for Meeting SDK, Windows, local recording container sample. The next thing that you will need to do is that Windows containers can only run on Windows hosts. So you would probably need to have access to a Windows machine, install Docker, and change it from Linux container into Windows container. For my case, I have already switched it over to a Windows container. So let's get started into the code sample which will be provided. One of the key things that we will be providing in this sample is that there will be a Docker file. You can choose different repos if you want to, but the samples is going to use these specific images. All right. So for consistency's sake and to make sure that I can run this on my environment, I am going to add in all the repository and dependencies that will allow me to build the code sample within the Docker container itself. So some of the things that are being installed or being prepared on this Docker image or Docker container is I am gonna do things like install Chocolatey, right? Some of these make related dependencies. One important part is definitely Visual Studio 2022 build tools. And within these build tools, I'll also need to add things like manage desktop build tools, okay, some Visual C++ build tools, some of the CMake, some of the SDK. All right. As of this video, the Docker file itself is not optimized, right? But the worst case scenario is that if it's not optimized, you will just be using slightly more disk space in the Docker container itself, right? So if we hit down, we are installing more build tools as well. All right. And one key component that we will be using will be Visual C++ package manager, right? What this does is that it installs the package manager and bootstrap it so that when we do a build, it is able to find some of the packages dynamically. All right, some of the dependencies which I'm using in my code samples are things like code and JSON C++ for me to pass some of the JSON files, right? And if I go ahead, yep, some of the optional components which you might find useful is that sometimes I hear customers saying that, oh, I want to save my local recording directly to AWS S3 storage. What you could do is that you could install AWS command line interface and use it after the local recording has been saved, processed, and thereafter use AWS command line interface to upload it into your own S3 bucket. Last but not least, before we copy the files, we have to make sure that some of the variables are set in our path. Okay, these are some of the mandatory ones. Example like the PowerShell, like the build tools related and the system related path. And some other optional components, if you're using AWS command line interface, you will definitely need to set a path to the exe file. So next, what we'll do within the Docker file is we will copy the source code over to the container, do a build, okay? Either you can set it as a debug or you can set it as a release and build it for x64 or x86 platform. Next, what we'll do after this build is done is that we will go to the directory which is built and start to run the exe file. All right. So if I go ahead and demonstrate to you how this is being built before we go through and walk through the code, this is what we will do. All right. We will first do a Docker build. Let me just expand this. Okay. I will just name it as, let me just redo this. Okay, Docker build. Okay, Meeting SDK. I'd like to put in the version number on Ubuntu. Nope, this is not Ubuntu. This is Windows. Give me a while. Let me try to find the right command. The build. Okay, this is the one. All right. So I'll build something called local recording image. All right. And then hang on, just give me a while. Build -t, build -t. Okay, this is the correct command, right? You just give it a name, build -t. Okay. Typically, I would like to append the version number as well so that I know what specific version this Meeting SDK is using. So I go ahead and I probably want to shift this up a bit so that you'll be able to see the build process. If I hit enter, it will do exactly what the Docker file is telling it to do, right? If you hit an error over here while trying to pull, most likely Docker is not running or the Docker desktop is still on Linux. Make sure that you set it to Windows. The first build might take you a while. Since I already previously built it, it's fairly fast for me, right? But you will expect the build to take around 10 to 20 minutes for the first build. Subsequent build will be faster because what you are going to do every time you change your code is just going to run from around line 95 onwards, where it's just copying the app and doing MS build. And last but not least, try to run the local recording, right? So for me to start, I probably need to prepare my environment. I want to launch my Zoom, make sure that I have a meeting ongoing first. All right, so right now I have a meeting ongoing. I can try to start my video. Hello. All right, so try to start my video over here. I'll just put in the background. All right, and I'll go over and try to launch the Docker container. Right, I want to launch this in interactive mode. Try to find the proper command. And one interesting thing that I'm going to do is that I am going to map the specific directory which I want to the specific directory which is in the Docker container. And to make sure that it's easy for us to find it later, let me probably put it as, let me think. I'll put it as demo, C drive demo. Let me try to see I already have this on my local machine. If not, I'll just quickly build it. Okay. Right, I've just checked since I already have demo, I will go need it as demo too. So what this command does is that I'm going to run the container or the image that I've prepared, map my local host C drive / demo2 to the folder which is found in the container. This is the path where the local recording will be saved, processed, and playable as a MP4 file. Right. So if I go ahead and run, this is what we will see. Right. There is a chance that this will fail because I have not put in a valid JWT token. So meanwhile, let me generate a Meeting SDK JWT token. Copy this. All right. You can see there's some command line running. All right. If this runs, means it's trying to fetch my JWT from a web service instead of from the config file. All right, seems it has succeeded, means to say the JWT token is valid because it's fetching from my web service. So what the code does, which I'll walk through with you later, is that it will first try to record. If it can't record, you'll prompt the host, which is over here. I'm the host over here. All right. It will prompt me as a host to allow the raw data center or the Meeting SDK to record. So if I go ahead and allow recording, what it does is that you'll try to start recording to this specific folder. And because when we do a Docker run, we map it locally, instead of saving the file within the container, it's gonna save it on my host. So if I go ahead, go to my regular Zoom client as a host, allow the Meeting SDK to record, I click on allow recording. Now it is given recording permission, right? This is running, this is recording. If I go back here, I say hello, right? I wave around. Okay, my microphone might not be recording because I'm using it for this demo video, right? You can look at the camera, say hello. All right. And once I do something like end the video, right, I'll end the meeting. It will start to do an encoding, right? Once the encoding is done, you'll just exit. All right, this is done. This has exit. So if I go here and check my locally mapped C drive /demo2, I should be able to see this folder. All right, go in. There's two files. One is an audio only file. One is an MP4 file. If I go ahead, play this, you can see that I've recorded myself together with audio as well. All right. So without further ado, let me jump into some of the code samples of how this is achievable. This sample is a slightly modified version of the sample which you download from Marketplace. Move this down a bit so that we can see much more of this code. The start is at the bottom. We will start with main. All right. So main is only always running in a message loop. All right. So this message loop does a few things. Okay. The message loop will just run the main message. The second thing that it does is that it will, once the meeting has ended, try to run the encoder. And once the encoder has stopped running, this is where you can do some of the things that you want. Example, if you have your AWS command line interface installed, you can do something like AWS .exe, try to figure out how do you put in a token and then upload it directly to a S3 bucket. But this is not going to be within the scope of this demo, but it's just to show you where you will be able to run your own custom commands as and when you wish. So typically, it is ran after the meeting is over, the encoding is done, and then you can manipulate the files which are found over on your C drive demo, right? All right. So going one step further, what this does, okay, it goes to load config. Load config just tries to load the configuration file either from a JSON file or it fetches it from a web service. The next thing it does is that it goes to init SDK, right? Init SDK does things like, okay, set the domain, ask if you want to enable logging by default, all right, go through a 4-step process of doing a create network connection. Let me see. Register network connection, do the SDK off, and then after that, join a meeting. Right? So if I go ahead to the main part, join meeting. All right. Join e-meeting is called file reference. Okay. Join meeting is called once a SDK off is successful. All right. So what join meeting does is that you will set the parameters, set the meeting number which you want to join. Do make sure that if you are trying to join an external meeting or a meeting which is not hosted by a user within your account, you will need to publish your app. If not, you'll be given an error 63 or you're given an error 6601. Right. So you pass in a meeting number, you have to pass in a password. Okay. Give it a name, it can be any name. All right. And the rest of them can be set as default, set as now. So some of the things I have set is that I have specific event listener to make sure that I know when I have successfully joined the meeting. Okay. Some of the things, help objects which I'm getting is getting the meeting recorder controller object. All right. And over here, what I'll do is I'll attempt to join the meeting. All right. So once the meeting is successful, I will be redirected to this specific method, which is called on in meeting. All right. So what on in meeting does? It will try to figure out, am I actually on meeting? Typically, when this event fires, I'm already in meeting. But to double check, I will call get meeting status to make sure that I have this specific status, meeting underscore status underscore in meeting. So there are two types of recording mode which you can do when you are doing local recording. One is gallery view, one is a normal view. Okay, so I have a Boolean variable that you can set slightly towards the top of these code samples. Then you can say, do you want it to be gallery view or do you want it to be the active speaker view, which is the default view, right? So this can be controlled through this part, right? So over here, what it does is just use the UI controller to either switch to a normal gallery view. If not, it sets to a active speaker view. Let me step out of this code. So the first run, when it originally joins the meeting, without knowing if it has permission or not, it will always try to attempt to start recording. Right. So if you try to call this method, can I start local recording? You will definitely throw you no. Right. But if somehow you are using a local recording token or privileged recording token, this will go through. Right. So typically what happens is if you go through this will be returning false and it will not go through with the rest of the code. So what happens is over here, in my can I start local recording? What I will do is that I have a prompt. What the prompt does is it starts to prompt the host for recording privilege. Okay, so this is the specific command which will request the host, and you'll shoot out a prompt to the host to say, hey, this specific Meeting SDK is asking for recording privilege. Do you want to give it or not? All right. So when the host press allowed or approved, what over here, I have this specific event handlers. Okay, either if it's given host, given co-host, or given recording permission. So when I prompt, if host gives me recording permission, this event will fire. Right. This event will fire, and if I check it again, can I start local recording? It will now return me yes, since the host has given me recording permission. So what I'll do is that once I'm given recording permissions, I will go in and attempt to start recording. Okay, attempt to start recording only has a few lines of code. You'll get the controller, which is a helper object. I will use the helper object to do just start recording and pass in the start time, and that's it. Right. And once that the meeting has ended, what it will do, okay, it will stop. Okay, and if you remember towards the end of the code, what you will do, okay, we will do one thing. So this will exit. All right, this will exit. And what I'll next do is that I will run this specific encoder. This will just convert the raw recorded file into the M4A file and the MPEG 4 file. Right. And this will keep running until it is finished, once it has ended or finished, it will go to the next part of the code where you will be able to run your own specific custom commands. Yep. So with that, this is a short walkthrough of how do you run local recording with Meeting SDK in a containerized environment. Do make sure that in specific hosting, you are looking at hosting services which supports Windows container, because you can only run Windows images or Windows-based hosts, right? I hope you found this sample useful. If you need any help, do head over to our developer forum, which is located at devforum. All right, which is located at devforum.zoom.us. Thank you for your time and hope you found this video interesting and helpful for your journey. Thank you.